Franco Colombo had deadlifted 750 pounds. He had squatted 655. He had bench pressed over 500 at a body weight of 185 pounds. He had rebuilt his body after doctors told him he would never walk again. And at 78, he was still physically active, still training clients, and his body outlasted almost every prediction anyone ever made about it. You've been told that heavy lifting destroys your joints. Franco Colombo's life is the direct answer to that. And it is not the answer most people expect. Let's dive in. Load is medicine. Here is what the conventional fitness world gets wrong about heavy lifting and aging. They say the load breaks the body down. The research says the opposite. Progressive resistance training, heavy compound loading, increases bone mineral density in older men. Multiple systematic reviews confirm it. Studies from 2022 and 2024 show that high-intensity resistance training builds bone at the spine and the hip, not just muscle. A 2025 study of over 1,300 older men found that men with low muscle mass and low bone density had up to a 29% higher risk of all-cause mortality compared to men who maintained both. Not a minor difference, not a trend, 29%. And here is the part that no one talks about in the mainstream fitness space. Heavy load doesn't just build bone and muscle. It builds connective tissue, the tendons, the ligaments, the fascia that hold the structure together. It trains the nervous system to recruit more motor units more efficiently. It builds what you cannot see in the mirror, the architecture beneath the muscle. Franco Colombo did not have a great body despite the heavy lifting. He had a great body because of it. And his body stayed functional, dense, and capable because the loading had built something structural, not just cosmetic.
The question was, why I trained heavy, why I don't have more injuries, remember. We talked about that. The muscle, the bone is to be in place, you have to do it correct. But only heavy training makes a guy win Mr. Olympia. There is no way out. Pumping up the muscle, it looks soft, it looks meaty. You want to look like granite.
That is a 185-pound man, moving weight that most men in any gym today will never come close to. But here is what you need to understand. The point of this is not the numbers. The point is what the pursuit of those numbers did to the architecture of his body over 50 years. The Chiropractic Edge. Most men who lift heavy the way a driver runs a car into the red line every single day. No oil change, no service intervals, just load until something breaks. Franco Colombo was different. In 1977, the same year he suffered one of the most catastrophic injuries in the history of competitive strength sports, he also received his doctorate in chiropractic from Cleveland Chiropractic College. That is not a coincidence. That is the philosophy made literal. Franco understood the spine the way a structural engineer understands a building. He understood what load does to a vertebral disc, what a deadlift does to the erector spinae when the bracing is correct versus when it is not. What happens to a knee joint under 655 pounds of squat when the mechanics are right, and what happens when they are not. He was not lifting blind. He was lifting with clinical precision in a 185-pound frame.
The only reason why I switched was I have to thank chiropractic for that. When I became a chiropractic doctor, my main goal was I want to know about muscle. Then I got another thing in the head to answer your question regarding injury. And that the answer is the bone, like the hip or the lumbar or the joint. The bone is to be in perfect place and the muscle is already in place. When it's in perfect place, you can lift heavy weights for over 100 years. But if it's out of place, in 2 or 3 years you can ruin it.
And when the worst happened, that knowledge saved him. 1977, the inaugural World's Strongest Man contest at Universal Studios, California. Franco Colombo was in first place overall, competing against men who outweighed him by nearly 100 pounds when the refrigerator race began. Athletes strapped a refrigerator to their back and ran a course downhill. Franco slipped. The weight came down on his knee. It dislocated. It tore every tendon and ligament in the joint. 6 hours of surgery. His doctors told him he would be lucky to walk again. Most men, camped is the end of the story. Franco Colombo used his chiropractic training to design his own rehabilitation protocol, step by step, week by week, 3 years. In 1981, 4 years after the accident that should have ended everything, Franco Colombo walked onto the Mr. Olympia stage in Columbus, Ohio, and won. His legs were not perfect. His physique was leaner and more detailed than it had ever been. His musculature, built by decades of heavy compound loading, had a density and structural completeness that the judges could see from 20 feet away. You do not rebuild that from light weights and band work. You rebuild it with the same tool that built it. If you are a man over 40 still in the gym or trying to get back in, I put together a free 15-point protocol. Link is in the description or scan the QR code. Intensity is the signal. There is a narrative that gets repeated in every mainstream fitness article about men over 40. Do more cardio. Drop the heavy lifting. Protect the joints. Switch to machines. Franco Colombo had a different view.
The cardio, people never understood that when you lift weights, it's cardio. Because when you're doing bench press, for example, in bench press, when you go like this, it's cardio, all cardio. Now I put 100 pounds in 2 days, it's more cardio.
He is not saying cardio has no value. He is saying something more specific and more important than that. Heavy compound training done with intensity, short rest intervals, 5 to 7 sets per movement, no wasted time, sends the same systemic signal as dedicated cardiovascular work. And it does something cardiovascular work cannot do. It builds the bone, it builds the muscle, it builds the connective tissue, it preserves the testosterone response. It maintains the skeletal architecture that determines whether a 78-year-old man can still go swimming or whether he needs help getting out of a chair. Franco Colombo and Arnold Schwarzenegger trained with limited rest periods, 5 to 7 sets per exercise. The sessions lasted 2 to 3 hours, not because they were trying to do cardio, but because that was what the work demanded. The intensity was the signal, and the body, built by that signal for decades, responded by becoming something that lasted. If this video changed how you think about what your body can still do, hit subscribe and join our family. Thank you for your support. If you were a man over 40, here is what the Franco Colombo method actually looks like for you. Not a competition program, not a 6-day split. 3 principles. 1, pick up something heavy 3 times a week. Compound movement, squat, deadlift, or a loaded press. Not the heaviest weight in the gym, the heaviest weight you can move with clean mechanics and full control. That line is different for every man, and it is not fixed. It moves forward. 2, rest less between sets than you think you should. Franco and Arnold kept rest windows tight, not because they were punishing themselves, but because the intensity of the session is the stimulus. A rested lift is a comfortable lift. A comfortable lift is a maintenance lift. You are not maintaining, you are building. 3, never stop. Franco Colombo trained from the time he was a teenager in Sardinia until the week he died at 78. Not because he was obsessed, not because he had no other life, because he understood as a chiropractor, as a power lifter, as a bodybuilder, that the body does not preserve what it is not asked to produce. Stop asking, and it stops building. The body that lasts is not the body that rested. It is the body that kept loading. He started in a village without a proper gym, without coaching, without a wearable that tracked his heart rate. He had a barbell and a system. Heavy load, intelligent mechanics, no days that don't count. He became the pound-for-pound strongest bodybuilder in the history of the sport. He earned 2 Mr. Olympia titles, separated by 4 years and 1 catastrophic injury. Not because he had nothing left to prove, because the body he had built over 60 years of loading it with intention, was still capable of taking him wherever he wanted to go. Drop a comment right now. What is the heaviest compound lift you still do every single week? Deadlift, squat, bench, overhead press? Tell me the movement and the weight. Because somewhere in this comment section is a man over 40 lifting more than he did at 30. And he needs to know he is not alone. That's why we're here. See you in the next one.